Fayr. It stands for Family Advocacy is Your Responsibility, Fayr. And this is our second week. This is Fayr, Co-Parenting Simplified. We are helping co-parents navigate all of the stresses that we go through as co-parents. And today's guest, I'll first introduce our star-studded panel here. Gabrielle Hartley is the author of the best-selling book, Better Apart. She's got 25 years plus experience in the family law world, and she's one of the most forefounding coaches right now. I suppose I suppose you would say, what, Gab? You are. I'm trying to remember the big title that you had
the conversation starter.
Global conversation starter. We're changing the conversation around divorce to make it so that it's no longer negative. And I lead a divorce coach certification program.
There we go. Coach certification program. I'm sorry, I needed to write that one down. But yeah, we're super delighted to have her. And then Gab, why don't you go ahead and introduce our panel here.
So Susan Guthrie is the, I like to call her the president of the mediation section of the dispute resolution portion of the American Bar Association. And she heads up something called Learn to Mediate Online. She's a 30-year divorce attorney, 30-year veteran divorce attorney, and she now trains mediators and lawyers around the world in how to mediate online, take their cases from the past into the 21st century in a really powerful way. So it's very exciting to be here with Susan. We're both working on making the conversation more positive and more powerful. And in our travels, we were so fortunate to get to meet the amazing Kate Anthony. And I'm going to let, it depends where you are, because to me, she's like, yeah. It depends, yes. So Susan, why don't you introduce the lovely and talented, charming Kate?
Well, I would love to. Kate has been a guest on my podcast twice, and both podcasts, her episode has been the #1 episode ever. So she certainly has hit on something that is valuable and important to those who are listening. So I think you all who are out there today are going to find her insights interesting. Kate is the host and creator of the Divorce Survival Guide podcast. She has a very active support group on Facebook, and she is the creator of the Should I Stay or Should I Go program, which I think is, that has been the topic of conversation on both episodes that Kate has come on my podcasts, and has been what has really struck the chord with all of you. And I know she'll be touching on that today. But Michael, you actually had some other fun facts, and I've known Kate for a while now and did not know these. I knew she was an actress, but I did not know these things about her.
Yeah,
so why don't you share?
Super duper. She's a superstar. No, Kate has over 30 years experience as an actress. Her first 5 years began on Sesame Street, and the last 5 years she was on Grey's Anatomy, which is really cool. I'm sure. I'm sure that was, you got stories upon stories of that. But what's really unique about her is, she went through, she's a co-parent of, she has a 14-year-old son. She has been a co-parent now for 11 years. And what's awesome about her is that she recognized that there is a pain point here, and she is using her skills and talents to educate people. She's coached executives of Fortune 500 companies. And we're just really, really excited to have her here. Thank you very much for joining us, Kate.
Oh my God, you guys, I love you so much.
You were in a bad mood before you got on.
I want to remind everyone that this is an open Q&A, so if you happen to be on, please shoot in any questions to Kate. We'll also have her link down here at the bottom that you can also go find out more about her. But she really literally is the premier voice in this space around the well, all of these ladies are actually. I'm kind of a schmuck here, so.
Yeah. That's what we always say about you, Michael. He's such a schmuck.
No,
you should really work harder.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. We all have kind of different flavors and backgrounds, so we're very excited.
That's what makes it good.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
So, Kate, why don't you share with us, you know, obviously your topic of should I say or go, I mean, this is extraordinarily relevant now, given the COVID, everybody's been, got cabin fever, they're probably feeling that itch.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is something we're seeing a lot. I know that, you know, a lot of my clients were at various stages of the decision-making process or the, you know, actually getting divorced process. And then everything had to get shifted, changed, paused, right? And so I have people who had already moved out and were getting divorced and then made the decision to go back into one house because it was just going to be easier that way. I have clients that did that and then were like, oh, nope. And then separated out again. I have people who were like about to make the move and then couldn't. There's financial impacts, people suddenly losing their incomes and not able to afford the house or the apartment or whatever that they were thinking of moving into. And then there's people who have been thinking about this for a long time and have been on the fence for a long time. And this has sort of solidified for them, like, oh my God, I have got to end this. And then a lot of people who are like, I can't believe I waited this long. And here I am, and now I'm trapped, right? Now I'm stuck. So, I mean, I've seen it runs the gamut. And, you know, I think what's obvious right now is that this is, this whole pandemic is shining a light on a lot of stuff for a lot of people, right? And this is one of the things that I think it's really shining a light on. It's shining a light on our relationships. Even really good, healthy relationships are struggling under the stress right now of, you know, of quarantine, right? I make that. I think. I hear that.
Well,
Susan and Gab, you're the married folks on the family.
I was just going to say, I actually have seen a little bit of both because I have definitely seen the cracks being widened, but I actually think working together with a partner in a relationship that is working, actually under stress like this, is actually helping build some relationships and make other relationships stronger.
Absolutely.
You know, I think it goes both ways.
And in a variety of ways. I mean, like there are couples who like always mean to get to therapy, but their schedules don't allow it. And now the therapists are so busy and the couples are available. So they're doing their telehealth once or twice a week. I don't know if anyone said today, a little quote that I had said about the value of post nuptials. Sometimes there's just an issue in your marriage where, you know, somebody's about to enter a business relationship that you're not feeling very trusting about. You otherwise love the person, but you're thinking like, oh, is this the last straw? You know, there are ways to contract your liability and your responsibility for whatever bad decisions that your spouse might make so that you can possibly remain in your relationship. So I think it can really go both ways. I am a bit concerned about domestic abuse being on the rise in these close quarters, and I imagine you probably hear a fair bit of that, Kate.
I do, and that's that's domestic violence in itself, like actual physical abuse, is you know, calls to the domestic violence hotlines are on the rise. Unfortunately, calls to child abuse hotlines and children and family services are down. And that's terrifying because it signifies that, you know, the teachers are not seeing things, you know, and kids are probably in these households. So that's very scary. But yes, calls to the domestic violence hotlines are definitely up. And, you know, people are quarantined with people that are very dangerous. And, you know, what I want to say about that, in case anyone's watching, is that you're not stuck because of the pandemic and quarantine. All the shelters are open. They're helping more people than ever. And, you know, we can absolutely you can absolutely get to help. I am not an expert in that. I do know, you know, there's the domestic violence hotline. If you Google thehotline.org, the phone number will come up. Everything is right there. So please take care of yourself if you're in that situation. I do see a lot of emotional abuse uptick, because quarantine and, emotional abuse is often a sort of a symptom of people who don't know how to process their emotions well. And there's a lot of heightened emotion and people who have suffered trauma that's getting re-triggered right now. There's a lot of trauma happening right now. We just lost Susan, did we?
She'll pop back in.
Yeah. So there's a lot of that, and I think you're right, Gab. There people are, and Susan was saying that people are really, you're back.
Yes.
People are good health. People are finding ways to work together. There is a sense that like when you're stuck in a house together, you better work. You're gonna have to work this out.
That's
right?
all you got.
Yeah.
It's all you got, right? And so you may find a willingness or something that you may not have found under normal circumstances. And if that's the case, like wonderful. Take this time to do this work and get into couples therapy for sure. Yeah. Sorry, go on.
No, I just see that there's some questions that are popping.
Yeah, some questions popping up.
But I was just going to say one quick thing, which is, sometimes it doesn't mean that you're meant to stay together, but sometimes because there's limited access to courts. I mean, I have a very busy online mediation practice and divorce coaching practice, and I'm getting calls like, what do? I really want to get a divorce. My wife's going to file. And I say, well, she's actually not going to file because there's nowhere to file. There's no emergency. Just because she's mad doesn't mean she can start a lawsuit. So, it's the forced togetherness can be creating almost an opportunity for conversations that wouldn't otherwise happen because you're at your wit's end. And if it doesn't break you, it might be able to get you to actually engage in a more meaningful way.
No, we have a question from Annalisa. I want to make sure we get to her question here. She asked, how do you co-parent with someone diagnosed with bipolar and narcissistic disorder who is emotionally disconnected from our children? You want to say, field that?
Yeah, it's a great question, Annalisa. And my first impulse is, without knowing a lot of the backstory here, is that you don't. You actually parallel parent with someone like that. If you're engaged in a co-parenting relationship with someone who is actually dangerous to your mental health and well-being, you want to stay as disconnected as possible while parenting, the children. If he's emotionally disconnected from the children, I mean, there's really not much you can do about that, right? Emotional disconnection, Lord knows, my parents were emotionally disconnected for me, but if he's actually dangerous to your mental health and well-being, you do not want to be in a co-parenting relationship. You want to be in a parallel parenting relationship. And I will say that apps like Michael's, the Fayr app, is a brilliant way to do that. So you limit communication. You do not engage in trying to, convince them of various things or whatever, and you limit your exposure. And using an app, a co-parenting app like Fayr, will help you tremendously in this. I mean, it's why it was invented, right, Michael?
Yeah, I mean, you just look. You want to find a way, especially with people like that. You just want to deal with the facts, and you just want to be, like I always say, you want to be. You don't worry about being right. You're past that. You just want to be effective for your children, for the sake of your children. So
exactly.
You're able to communicate constructively without having to communicate verbally, which escalates unnecessarily.
Yeah,
and quite frankly,
absolutely.
A person who has bipolar, narcissistic disorder, or who's just totally self-centered, whether or not they have a diagnosis, might be impossible to deal with. So you just need to remember that you're never going to get the satisfaction from them that you may crave, and you need to work on you to not need that from them, because you're not going to get it. And you, as Kate just said very eloquently, you're going to parallel parent with that person, and hopefully that person isn't going to undermine everything that you do, because then whenever you have the children back with you, you're going to always be picking up the pieces. And if that describes your situation, just know that you're not alone. There's lots and lots of people who are living the way you're living, and you just have to do the very best you can given the hand that you're dealt with your kids and your ex.
And I
Yeah,
have
I was just gonna.
sorry, I have three. There are 3 books here. There is Bill Eddy's BIF method, which is brief, informative, friendly, and firm, which is you do not get into any of the details with them. Then you've got Lindsay's brilliant book. Is this what you were grabbing, Susan?
Yes, it was. I was headed right over there.
I'm sure it was. Lindsay
Yeah.
Ellison's book, Magic Words, How to Get What You Want from a Narcissist. And then there is Deborah Doak's book, High Conflict Divorce for Women. Phenomenal. All these 3 books are going to be your Bibles.
I'll make sure we post those as references for this broadcast.
Well, and I do want to make a point because Annalisa points out that she feels that her co-parent is emotionally disconnected from the children. Again, I think Kate has said this well, Gab said this well. You aren't going to make them connect with the children. I mean, if they truly have bipolar disorder or narcissistic personality disorder, those are their issues. Hopefully they're getting help. Maybe they're not. But you do need to make sure your children are getting support in dealing with the fact that they have a disconnected parent. That is something that will color their childhood on into their adult. And I think Kate said she had disconnected parents. So she knows that's something that the thing that the parent who is present for them can do is make sure they have that support, whether that be therapy or you helping them, or there are actually a number of online resources as well. So, and there's actually very good information in those books about helping your children as well during this.
Yep, absolutely. And, you know, I also, I was going to say something and it's gone. It's gone. It's gone. It left my brain.
Ooh, I would say leaking brain.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a fascinating subject, getting down into the aggregate of these real questions. These are the big questions in life, like how dealing with other people, especially when it pertains to affecting your emotional, mental, and particularly the mental and emotional health of your children. It just has so many repercussions, and so making the right decision and educating yourself is really important. It can have life-altering consequences.
Yep.
Well, and that's the beauty of online, because there's so much information available online.
Right.
Yeah. And that's what I was going to say, was that the beauty of this pandemic is that you can actually now work with therapists that you may not have been able to work with before because they weren't in your area. Like, I just started working with a therapist who's in Missouri. You know, she's like the best person for me. And I would never have been able to work with her, but now she's online and doing telehealth, and like, doesn't matter where we are, you know, which is the beauty of being a coach. I work with women all over the world. But therapy has been, you know, has these parameters and stuff, but, you know, with telehealth, we're really sort of starting to break this down a little bit. Yeah.
I think Susan and I have found the same thing with mediation, although we both started mediating online about a year or so before this happened. But I know I have found that a lot of my my colleagues, and probably Susan has found the same, they've been very resistant, and now they're seeing it's actually pretty easy, and there's great efficiency for everybody going on.
There's actually a lot of benefits that I think people, and right now it's very easy and accessible. I know that many of the listeners might be finding that they are in the middle of disputes over changing their parenting plan right now because of the COVID situations, and not knowing, well, if the courts are closed, how are we going to resolve these, you know, interim changes? There's a lot of people facing situations around money. Somebody's lost their job or been downsized or furloughed. How are you going to recalculate child support, et cetera? So you can reach out to an online mediator. Mediators don't just do the whole divorce. Mediators can help you with finite issues to help you come to even an interim resolution. Like, we're going to do this for now, and then we'll go, or we'll reassess down the road, or we'll go back to our former, you know, plan, whatever works. That's the whole point.
I do think that the importance of the temporary order cannot be overstated at this particular juncture, because so much is changing and so much is going to continue to change, and we just don't know. So, but it doesn't mean that you just fly by the seat of your pants and have no order. you can still have a temporary order for how it is now, and then we'll reassess when things change, right?
Right,
Not
or
that I'm
a
a legal
temporary
expert.
agreement.
Right, an agreement.
Yeah.
The lawyers
Agreement.
were like, well,
Yes.
it's not
Agreement.
really an order, but
It's not an order,
agreement.
it's an
I know.
agreement. Yes, okay.
Right.
Right.
But you
I'm
can
not the lawyer, I
agree
can
to
shut up.
live by that, right? You
Right.
can
You can-
agree as to what works for your family right now, and then you can agree that it's going to change in the future. We all don't really know
Right.
what the new normal is going to look like.
Or when
I
it's
have
going
no
to be.
idea.
Yeah. And so maybe
Right.
you make changes now, and maybe you need another change when school's out, and maybe you need another change as you keep going. So,
Or
Yep.
maybe the temporary order that you enter, agreement that you enter, works.
yeah.
Right.
Maybe it just works. Maybe like,
Maybe
you know
it
what?
just works.
This isn't so bad.
Exactly.
Because one thing that I have found is lots of people are resistant to giving custody or parenting time to a spouse who wasn't present, or to, you know, for whatever variety of reasons, but yet they feel badgered and annoyed that the person's constantly chasing them for time. And time again, I've had clients come back and say to me, thank you so much for making me, not that I made them, but the court made them, you know, enter an order or an agreement, because once they know, okay, Thursday is his day, or this is his time, then the person is no longer bugging them. They have freedom, there is space, and there's something to that, and it lets everybody move forward in a better way. And if you have difficulty communicating even after you have an order, again, you know, not to belabor the point, using an app such as the Fayr app is really a perfect way to communicate, so that everyone is accountable. There's no ignoring each other, and there's no surprise interruptions and emails while you're at work. You just are going to look at the app rather than having it pop up in your work feed.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah,
I have
absolutely.
a question for you. I actually know some people right now who they're not sure as to whether or not maybe just this new situation they find themselves. Let's say you've been married 5 years and you've lived these lives where I've got my job, you have your job, and so we go 10 hours a day without seeing each other, and now we're around each other all the time. How does one know as to whether or not, hey, this sort of stress that's on us now for being around each other so much is something I need to act on and choose another course of my life when this finally lifts and whatever new normal we come into, or do I say, listen, that this was a special circumstance? I think a lot of people are struggling about right now, like what do they do?
Right, like
are ones that cannot be resolved.
So yeah, so I guess what I'm hearing, the question is like, we're together all the time now, which we haven't been, and we're annoyed and irritated, and like, is this annoyance and irritation something I need to be worried about, or is this just like a temporary kind of thing, right?
The new revelation that, hey, I can't live with this anymore, or should I just chalk this up as, hey, this was a stressful time? I guess it's more exploration needs to be done on it. What would you advise?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely advise couples therapy, like quickly and immediately online, because I think that people need to be able to set boundaries within their own homes right now. If you're one of the people that feels like, if you have a more avoidant attachment style and you are suddenly like together all the time, you're going to start to get triggered and stuff is going to come up. And you're going to probably lash out and be mad at the person, and it may not be the person, right? So you're going to want to explore your attachment and their attachment, and work out boundaries, and how can we together as a couple solve the problem of we're always on top of each other now in this new paradigm. And hearing each other's concerns and feelings about it in a constructive and in a neutral container of a therapy session, to be able to communicate those things, like, I need space. You know what I need in the morning? Here's what I'm used to having in the morning, and this is my rhythm, and I feel like it's getting interrupted. How can I continue to have that while giving you what you need, right? And there's so much communication that has to happen that we don't tend to have. We don't tend to have as much intentional communication, I think, as we should, as couples. And doing it with a therapist is probably the healthiest way. If you're not used to it and you're not really that good at it, doing it with the help of a therapist is probably the best idea.
And I think that it's interesting because I also hear the opposite, which is couples who are realizing that they're really involved in whatever they're doing and they're not really coming together at all. And they're
interesting.
Together,
yes.
And they're together, but they're like,
they're in separate wings of the house.
They're not necessarily angry at each other. They're just coexisting. And they're, I'm getting calls from those people too, which are like, and then maybe, one of those people has like a shiny new person on the wings at work who they're no longer seeing, and they're finding themselves daydreaming about them and that sort of thing. So there's all kinds of ways for marriages to unravel.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a really good point. And I think the intentionality of that, right? You would have the coming home and we have dinner, right? And so making sure that you're keeping some kind of schedule so that you don't get into this amorphous separation, right? Susan,
well,
that
goes. I was going to say, I was actually thinking of Gabrielle's book because when we're talking about all of us living together under these circumstances where we are feeling stressed, where all our schedules have changed. I would imagine you all have very different, lives and schedules at the moment. Our entire families do. It might be the time where we have to dig deep and to pull out of a couple of Gab's, key components in her book there, a little patience, a little clarity around what's really going on. Somebody may, yesterday I had something go on that made me irritated and I somewhat lashed out at my poor unsuspecting husband and, quickly realized I was taking something else out on him that had nothing to do with him and quickly groveled and said I was sorry and cleaned that mess up. But one of the things that maybe we aren't doing as much as we might do because we're under so much stress is cleaning our messes up, being self-aware of what's driving us. There's a lot of stress on all of us being thrown out of our daily routines. We as human beings love our routines to a large degree, and none of us have them anymore. We can try to replicate some of them. Kate said that, trying to do things, having some normalcy in your days, but maybe a little space and patience and understanding that your reactions may be somewhat amplified. I think that goes a lot to what Michael was saying. I love that the people that are asking those questions, Michael, are at least self-aware enough to know that this might be the circumstances and not the relationship.
Yeah, right. I love that too. It's true. Good point.
Well, I think people are afraid of change, right? Change scares people, and they don't want to act precipitously. But they also want to, if something is irreparable, it's just not going to change, get better. They're also trying to make a good decision for their life and happiness. And I do think it's important to identify that as soon as possible because we don't get our time back, right? It's the one thing we just don't get back.
But this isn't the time where we can make big decisions. Most people are sort of stuck where they are, unless they're, unless, as Kate raised before, unless it's an unsafe environment. For most people, it's really a time to do thinking and reflection and take a step back and notice what you have. Maybe all you have are internal resources that you can't quite activate yet, and notice how you can be present for yourself, how you can take more control over your life right now. As Kate also mentioned before about creating a container of space. You might be living in a small apartment. I'm originally from New York City. Lots of people live in very small spaces. Yeah. And it might be that you have to take turns using the master bedroom as a place to just be away from people. You might live somewhere where you might not live in the US, you might be in total lockdown somewhere. I think in Spain, they were just allowed to start taking walks in certain areas. So, you may make the decision, we're not going to all be in one room at the same time for more than a few hours a day. And here are the hours because I need to take space or I'm going to explode on all of you. And you may not have done anything to me. I'm just pissed because I'm trapped here with you.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not really about you. It's just because I'm trapped here.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
yeah.
And the other point is, and Kate said this in another interview that we did recently, but for those people who are wondering if their marriage is not working, there's something in that as well. Maybe, the fact that you're having that thought process is something to explore, but there's also, it's not like you are stuck in your home, but you're not stuck. There are resources available to you to work through that question. Should I stay or should I go? I mean, to allude to Kate's program, that's an entire program, right? Kate, they don't just call you up, you take out your magic 8-ball and go, well, let me tell you, you're out.
Right.
Or no, you're staying. I mean, you work through, this is a process. So this is a great time to start that process if it's a question for you.
It is a fantastic time to start this process. And, I work with women individually, one-on-one, but I also have an online program, and it's all, by the way, all of my individual videos are available as transcripts as well. So I've sort of covered the bases in terms of your privacy and when you can do this and how can you listen to this, and all of that. And it's a very in-depth, robust program that will help you really pull apart. I always say sort of like pulling apart, like what's his, what's yours, what's cultural, what's just like, this is marriage in the 21st century. And like what you can do about each component. And it's a great time to do this work because you're not like in the hot seat. The fire's not under your butt, like trying to have to make a decision by Tuesday. It's like, oh, well, we're here. So
you got
let me
nowhere
do
to
this
go.
work.
Right.
Exactly. And, I just want to circle back to something we were talking about in the very beginning, which is that if you have decided that you're going to go, and you've already made that decision, and then you were quarantined together and suddenly you're getting along really well, that may not mean that you need to get back together. What it may mean is that you have the opportunity to create an amazing co-parenting relationship. And that, once you've taken all of the, as I like to say, like the emotional getting your needs met off the table, right? Once I stop trying to get everything to fill my emotional well from you, and you stop doing the same, and we're like, oh, look, we're in this sort of neutral space and it's going really well, that's a great sign for your future as co-parents. It may not mean that you should be together. My ex and I started getting along fantastically when we split up, better than ever. And we are fantastic co-parents and great friends. We're even in a band together now.
On your front lawn. I love that.
But
On my
Go
front
to
lawn.
her Facebook page.
But just
What do you play?
I sing.
You sing. Wow.
Oh, wait, didn't I see you with the tambourine?
tambourine.
Yeah.
Did I have a tambourine?
I believe you did.
Did I have it one day? Or I had a
You did.
shaker.
Maybe that was it.
Sometimes we just use
like dancing.
Sometimes we use just like Excedrin, bottle of Excedrin as our like maracas. It works really well.
But I just want to circle back on something Kate said. As the divorce lawyer, if you are getting along and you think you might be able to make it as a couple, it may be that you just haven't paid attention to each other for such a long time, and now you are finding each other again too. So I mean, the inquiry is tough, and it really could go either way. And to your point, I'm sure doing Kate's program or seeing a therapist or doing both could probably help you decide way to go.
Well, and if you decide to go, it can also help you decide the right way to go. You can, this is such an important thing that's happening right now because everybody's so frustrated. But if you do decide to go, and I know that this is something that's a part of your program as well, Kate, if that's a decision that people make about, yes, this relationship has hit its point where it's no longer serving us well, then you can handle that respectfully and kindly and in a way that allows your family to go forward in a better way. My site's divorce in a better way, so I'll stick with that. But
absolutely.
that, and these are your chances right now to think about that and to make your decisions by giving yourself a little grace and a little space to handle this in the right way.
The way I say it is, you can truly become better apart.
Yeah, very well said, you know. And think about the beauty. Well, but think about the beauty. The very first, mine's back there. I keep it right here in my office. That's how I met Gabrielle. I mean, that title, she had posted something about it on, I think it was LinkedIn. And I'm like, I got to meet this woman. I got to meet the attorney who wrote this book, because that concept of, there's so much in those two words, you know, that we can be better apart. And there is so much positivity in that if you can get your head around it. And I know you all who might be sitting out there stuck in quarantine with the person you think you don't want to be married to anymore going, God, I don't want to be respectful and kind. You know, read the book. It's not about being respectful and kind to the other person. It's being respectful and kind to yourself and your future life and the decisions that you're going to make and how you're going to go forward with your life and what your divorce and your life beyond are going to look like. And I know Kate talks about that. I know Gab talks about that. I talk about that. And Michael's entire, you know, reason for being and creating Fayr is so that you can go better. You can be better apart. You can co-parent better in a way. So
when you go through your divorce and beyond divorce, you know, Susan's podcast, like shameless endorsements, but really, I mean, they're called these things for a reason. They really resonate for like what people are going through. I think of it in terms of, what is the legacy you want for your children? What do you want your child's narrative to be? Do you want your child to think of themselves as from a broken home that they got through until they were 18? Or do you want them thinking about being a child in your house in this transformed recoupling, you know, and you're still a family, even if you're parallel raising the kids? I always say 2 households, 1 childhood. So, you know, I tell people, never say, well, when you're going to your mom's, when you're going to your dad's. It's like when you're going home, when you come back home, because to you it's mom's house and dad's house. To them, there's only one house. There's only one place that's home. Otherwise, they never have their own home. It's just the 2 different parents' homes. So I think it's just really important to come at this as much as you can, thinking about the legacy that you want your children to have as they look back on their life, because how you tell your story to yourself is going to inform how your child tells their story to themselves, and then how that story gets translated to your grandchild. So you're truly creating a legacy. And you're not thinking about that when you're like, I'm going to take them for everything that got screw him, I'm going to court, blah, 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 blah. It's not necessarily going to bring you the outcome. In fact, it's probably not.
It's not going to. Between Gab and I, we have over 55 years of experience. We can tell you right now. Sorry, I'm the old one. But you're not. That's not how the system works. So.
And what I always say. Oh, sorry.
No. Go ahead. We'll finish the thought. Go ahead.
What I always say about this is that. You know, it is your legacy, and that it, no matter what your history and no matter what your lineage of from divorce or brokenness or addiction or whatever, right? We can stop this in its tracks right here and right now. And we can change the story for all of the generations that come after us, for our children, for our grandchildren. It takes one generation to break these cycles. And, you know, I came from a family where the divorce was nasty. And, you know, my earliest childhood memories are of my parents screaming at each other. And I mean, just awful stuff, right? And like hell was I going to put my kids through that. And so that was, you know, and so I broke that. Like I broke that chain and that cycle. And any one of us who chooses to do this better and differently and in a better way is breaking, you know, often generations long cycles of this, because up until now, divorce really was just mostly nasty. That's just the way that it was.
So I see, this is something that, like, I think it's a systemic issue. That's why I always say, like, you know, I'm the global conversation changer around divorce. I grew up with parents who did it really well. I had shared custody in the 80s. Nobody did that. I was like weird. My family was so weird. You know, my dad, who was so involved, it was considered aberrant. You know, and and they said my home was you're from a broken home. I'd hear that, and it just like it made me so angry. And when my parents would talk about like, how great they were as co-parents, I used to think, well, you're not so great, because of course they still fought. I mean, they were divorced people, but it wasn't they never went to court. They did things with mediators and therapists and all that. And when I went and I worked for a judge, and I was like, wow, now I see how it is for, a lot of people. I just have this very strong internal desire to, not have other children feel the way that I felt, and not have other moms and dads feel, that all that negativity that is put upon all of us by the culture. There's so much shame around divorce. There's so much stigma around divorce. And, you have to remember, divorce is actually, although it's an old concept, the modern notions of divorce, it's only in the last 75 years, and only maybe in the last 40 years do we have fault divorce, and just the way things are done today. It's only probably in the last 15 years that moms and dads are on much more equal footing around the country, if not around the world.
Yeah, that's very true. And I think that's actually a really interesting point between Kate and Gabrielle's childhood experiences of divorce, because Gabrielle hasn't been divorced, and Kate, when she went through it, her parents' divorce informed it. We recently, I think we all know Ben Heldfond and Nikki DiBartolo, who wrote Our Happy Divorce. And when I interviewed them on my podcast, one of the things that struck me was that they both took their childhood experiences of family. Ben's parents had a difficult divorce. Nikki had a huge, very tight-knit, really tight family. And both of them said that one of the things that informed them into having Our Happy Divorce, and read the book, it's a fantastic tale of a happy divorce if you want to know what that looks like. Ben didn't want his child, Asher, to have the horrible divorce experience that he had when his parents divorced. And Nikki wanted Asher to have that tight family, which included having a dad who was a part of the whole family. And it worked out to be Our Happy Divorce. And I thought that was just so impactful to hear that you can, whatever your childhood experience was,
right,
you take the positive of it, whatever the inverse of it, and apply it to your experience.
And I love Ben and Nikki's work, Our Happy Divorce. I was like, literally, maybe this is TMI, but I was like crying when I read it, because I was like, I am Asher, and I was Asher. And it's like, I was so lucky. Like, I felt like calling my parents, like, thank you so much. And like, and to see that the world of lawyers and judges, God love my colleagues, but we're not creating an environment where we're encouraging people to be like Our Happy Divorce family. And those two people are amazing. And they're setting like, just such a wonderful blueprint. I hope that book goes completely viral. And I think it is.
Yeah.
A lot of press, and
yeah, it's there
mine is upstairs.
Our Happy Divorce.
I was gonna grab it, but
I was actually going to say you can reach out to them on Instagram through direct message, and they will send you a copy of the book.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
They're very kind with sharing that book. They sent this to me. I'm a divorce attorney. I've read it twice.
Yeah,
I love this story, and I loved their interview. I turned it into a special 2-parter because they did it themselves. They figured out the path. You know what? I think maybe that's what helped them. They didn't have divorce attorneys. They did eventually, but they sat down at a table at Starbucks and worked it out. But it took, there's more to it than just sitting down over a latte and getting it done. They tell you the real story in here, but it's inspirational. But I really thought that the fact that, and hearing it too from both of you as well, how it colors your world. It colors, you both help are divorce professionals. You help people through divorce. Kate's experience of divorce in both ways, her parents' divorce, her own divorce that went well. And then, Gabrielle, your parents' divorce, which really was groundbreaking in the 80s. That just didn't exist.
People will say to me, like often on interviews, they'll say, oh, you're a divorce lawyer. Like, you haven't been divorced. Like it's a bad thing. But
How dare you?
Yeah. But I say to them, well, like I changed houses every single day for 10 years. So like, You know, it's actually, even today, sometimes I catch myself saying, when we got divorced, even though I haven't been divorced, like it's our divorce, like literally, like that title, our happy, like it's so, and I listen, like, you know how we're aware of like what we hear. I've heard other people say the same thing, like when we got divorced, and I'm like, you're not divorced, you know, and then I'm like, oh, are you like me? Like, you know, it's like the vestige, right? Like when I was
son,
at law school,
my
well,
son
your son
uses
might
that.
be, your son might say it forever, right? Like,
He
you know,
says, he says we're divorced. And I'm like,
yeah.
wait, no, we're not.
Yeah. Well, that's the same way that I was, and my parents were great, but like we're divorced. We were divorced. So, you know, it's funny. I've been caught more than once, but by the time I got to law school, I said I wasn't going to ever take family law. I was never going to be a family lawyer. I was like, I'm so sick of this topic. Like, I mean, I could do a whole show just talking about like the co-parenting. Like my parents did every like meeting, like the whole, all the good things, but it was a lot, right? And by the time I got to law school, I was all set. But you know, then there's life.
Yes. Yeah, I didn't plan to be a divorce attorney either. Go figure.
You know, one of the things that's coming to mind right now is I'm just trying to put myself in the shoes of somebody who's sitting in this situation, and I know that when things get rough, you need to be very mindful the way you act, and people are reactive, emotional, impulsive, just at a time when they need to be very careful with what they say, write, and do. You know, I mean, Kate, what kind of advice do you generally give people when they're unable to, well, when their natural tendency is to be reactive, emotional, and impulsive, when they really best need to be careful with what they do?
Well, you know, the most important thing you can do is your own work, right? So someone who's emotionally impulsive and is self-aware enough to know. Now, if you're not self-aware enough to know that you're what you do, like you're, you know. But if you're emotionally intelligent enough to have self-awareness to say, you know what, I normally react. I'm about to go through this thing. It's going to be really difficult. You're going to want to definitely have a good therapist, have a good coach, utilize tools like saying, I'm not sure, let me get back to you on that. Call it out. Say, you know what, I'm really triggered right now and I am about to have a bad reaction. I need to call you back. Like the moment you can put like just the tiniest bit of space, between your the event and your reaction to it, just to use that teeny bit of space to jump out for a minute and collect yourself and call a friend, call a sponsor, call your therapist, call your coach, whatever it is, like someone who's trusted, or take a walk around the block and take 10 deep breaths. Do some of the exercises in Gab's book, you know, just meditate, yoga, some breathing.
Breathe, please.
Breathe, right? Yes. Take that space and it can just shift everything. And eventually that little tiny moment that you're able to take will start to increase, right? And it'll be more natural for you to be able to say, God, you know what? Let me think about that and I'll get back to you. Or, you know, or suddenly you will not be reacting anymore, right?
Because I think people are becoming very explosive right now, and I imagine many of them need to find a way to give themselves that time out in order to navigate that moment most effectively. And I can just, you know, I know from personal experience, as just so many other people that I know, that this becomes a problem, and it's hard to stay child focused when you're, you know, reactive.
Yeah.
Like that.
The one thing about, I'm sorry, just about breathing, you know, I always say it's not like it's going to make you a yogi because you take a breath and you have an affirmation or a mantra, but like if you get in the habit of taking a deep breath a couple of times a day intentionally with closed eyes, in and out, nice and slowly, then at the point where you're activated because somebody, your ex or your spouse, is really pissing you off, you'll be in that habit of breathing. And then it's going to be accessible for you right in that moment. And so it doesn't mean you're going to be totally non-reactive and totally chill, but like it does mean that you're going to probably be a wee bit less triggered and much less likely to say that incendiary comment that just blows everything up. So if you can get into a habit of intentional breathing and you just bring that into your everyday life, that could go really far. And it's such a small thing to do. That's
Totally.
just, that's not a legal tip, but it's a better.
No, it's great. And then, the other thing is, if anyone ever says to you, I'm triggered and I need a minute, give it to them. Tell them, because if you like claw in and don't let go, it's gonna go so badly. Yeah. If someone has the wherewithal to say, I'm triggered, I need to take a walk around the block, open the door and usher them out.
Let them have space. Hey, can we just say for 1 second, hello to Nikki and Shelby? They're tuning in all the way from Australia. And we have some friends out there in Australia, Anne Marie. And I've been, one thing I will say, Shelby, I see you say divorce can be done differently and with dignity. Australia as a country has always been at the forefront of doing divorce differently. And so, I just commend, Australia, many of the new innovations that are coming down the pike. I'm talking to 3 different founders of 3 different online dispute resolution platforms. All 3 of them are Australian. All 3 of them have been working on online dispute resolution for about 10 years or so. And, that didn't even start in the US until, relatively recently. So I just think that's really exciting.
It's so amazing. In the jurisdiction where I practice law in Massachusetts, we actually have a pilot program, which is based on an Australian program called Frisk, which is a less aggressive way without the rules of evidence applying, and it's like completely modeled off of an Australian model. They actually came to our court and did demonstration, and we went there, and it's just Australia. We're not in Australia, so we don't know. Maybe you guys look at us and think we're doing things ahead. I
doubt it.
It's easy to look at. Well, yeah, if they look kind of deeply, it's going to be the case. But I've had a couple of Australian professionals reach out to me and say that, they wish they were in America. Things look so much more civilized. And what I think is that they're, which we may be doing also, they're tuning into those of us who are doing things differently.
Right, and trying to have a voice or be loud about it. We do try to amplify.
I thought it was funny, interesting that these people from Australia, because in my mind, Australia really has their stuff together. And the fact that Australians were reaching out to me saying that, I wish I were in America because you guys really, deal with divorce in such a progressive way. Wow, the optics are funny.
Well, Kate, can you give us any final takeaways? Anything that you would advise people going through these difficult times, trying to figure out ways to navigate them? Just what's one big takeaway that you would want people to know?
I think the most important thing is do your own work. Really stop investigating and taking a microscope and trying to, excavate every little nook and cranny and nuance of your marriage or your partner, and really do the work on yourself. Really take the time to do your own work. There's so much in our human psyche that makes us, attracted to relationships that are not going to fulfill us or screw them up when we're in them or whatever. And there's just so much to be learned about the human condition and how we operate in relationships, that I think we should all take the time to examine before anything. The first half of my program is all self-exploration because I don't believe that you can look at a relationship until you've really looked at yourself.
Well, I want to thank you for joining us. What are your handles for anybody who wants to learn more about you, your program, everything like this? You want to go ahead and share that?
Yeah, Instagram is the Divorce Survival Guide, and my website is kateanthony.com. And on my website homepage, you'll find a link to my Facebook group, which is for women only. But that's a great place to start to do some exploration. And on Facebook, I think my Facebook is Coach Kate Anthony. Is that right? I don't even know.
I think
that.
Kate Anthony CPCC.
And
Yeah.
Shelby, thank you for writing in again. It's maybe I need to move to Australia.
Yeah, I'd like to just go to Australia. First of all, the accent is so fabulous.
Yeah,
having
awesome.
been speaking to so many
And
Australians
I've never
lately.
met an unfriendly Australian.
Never.
Yeah, that's
Never.
super cool people.
Half my family lives there. Got a lot of
Oh,
family in
right.
Australia.
Yeah,
Oh, I didn't know
Yeah.
that. I'm learning so many new things about you, Kate.
So my mom and her sister were born and raised in England. And then as soon as they got old enough, they fled to opposite ends of the earth.
That is funny.
My aunt fled to Australia and my mom fled to America.
Oh, that's really funny.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
have you been, Kate?
I have. Yeah.
That's
I have.
awesome.
Yeah.
Whereabouts
Yeah.
did you go?
My family's in Perth.
Okay.
So we went to Sydney, spent time in Sydney, and then went up to Cairns and did the Great Barrier Reef. This was many moons ago now, 20 years ago now. And then on our way back, and then spent a good portion of time in Perth. And then on our way back, we went to Fiji.
Awesome.
Wow.
It was awesome. Yeah, it was great.
Well, I want to thank everyone for coming on. This has been Co-Parenting Simplified, the Fayr way. And to our whole panelists here, and of course our special guest, Kate Anthony. I encourage everybody to go to kateanthony.com. Go check out GabrielleHartley.com. Gabrielle is amazing. And of course, Susan Guthrie is president of the
Divorceinabetter.com.
Yeah. Well, we're going to be we're going to be doing this every week. This is our second installment, and next Thursday we'll let you know as far as who we'll have on next. But again, Kate, thank you very much for being on with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
There you go. I just want to
adore you guys.
To Gabrielle or Susan before you jump off. Gabrielle,
Sorry.